this lecture, we will review the role of third parties in sex for sale, the pimp and the madam. This is a psychology course section in Human Sexuality. And yes, definitions matter. The psychological perspectives on terminology matters. Procuring or pandering is the facilitation or provision of a prostitute or other sex worker in the arrangement of a sex act with a customer. A procurer, called a pimp if male, or a madam if female, though the term pimp has still extensively been used for female procurers as well. Or a brothel keeper is an agent for prostitutes who collects part of their earnings. Definitions matter, and psychological perspectives on terminology matters. In an article by Anthony Marcus and colleagues entitled Different Perspectives on Terminology, Pimps and Madams, they state, although the terms madam and pimp are both slang for individuals involved in third-party support for sex work, they convey unequivocal and diametrical opposed race, class, and gender signals. Regardless of real-world behavior or temperament, the term pimp denotes a coercive, abusive, hypersexualized, and parasitical exploitative African American male whose work arena is flexible and non-nomadic. Though engaging in nearly identical labor, madams, in contrast, are thought to be hardworking, entrepreneurial white females whose management tasks in fixed-site brothels are often represented more sympathetically as mentoring, nurturing, and setting high business standards, again, regardless of real-world behavior or temperament. Now, in another article, it states that pimps and madams are diverse, depending on the strata in which they work, and they enter and leave the sex industry for a variety of internal and external reasons, such as family pressure, interactions with the police, and in some cases, recruitment from peer sex workers. Procuring can take abusive forms. Madams and pimps may punish clients for physical abuse or failure to pay, and enforce exclusive rights to turf, where their prostitutes may advertise and operate with less competition. In the many places where prostitution is outlawed, sex workers have decreased incentive to report abuse for fear of self-incrimination, and increased motivation to seek any physical protection from clients and law enforcement that a madam or pimp might provide. The madam or pimp prostitute relationship is often understood to be abusive and possessive, with the pimp or madam using techniques such as psychological intimidation, manipulation, starvation, rape and or gang rape, beating, tattooing to mark the woman as quote-unquote theirs, threats of violence towards the victim's family, forced drug use, and the shame of these acts. Recent empirical research of pimps and madams suggests that these assumptions about abusive relationships represent stereotyped oppression narratives and may only represent a small percentage of the relationships between madams and pimps and sex workers. In the United States, madams and pimps can be arrested and charged with pandering and are legally known as procurers. Thus, this combined with the tendency to identify pimping with African American masculinity may provide some of the explanation for why approximately 3/5 of all confirmed human traffickers in the United States are African American men. It has recently been argued that some of the extreme examples of violence cited in the article come primarily from such stereotyping supported by Hollywood screenwriters, selective and decontextualized trial transcripts, and studies that have only interviewed parties to sex commerce in institutions of rescue, prosecution, and punishment rather than engage in rigorous study. A 2018 study by researchers from the University of Montreal divided the concept of a pimp into 3 distinct categories. First, the low profile, which is primarily female. Second, the hustlers, predominantly male and violent, marking the common stereotype. And third, abused, even male to female split, more likely to be subjected to violence than to commit it. So again, procuring or pandering is the facilitation or provision of a prostitute or other sex worker in the arrangement of a sex act with a customer. A procurer, usually called a pimp if male, or a madam if female, or a brothel worker, is an agent for prostitutes who collects part of their earnings. In my next lecture, we will review the sociological perspectives on sex work, and some upcoming lectures will include sex trafficking. Is sex work a career? Working their way through college by being sex workers, risks of sex work, and the role of early abuse of the sex worker.